Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the 22nd Annual Family Cafe. Once again, I'm Jeremy. I'm here with Joe. How you doing?
Good morning. Great. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good.
We're in the home stretch here, the so-called red zone.
Red
This
zone.
is the second to last day of our virtual event. We hope you've been enjoying it. Just want to remind you one last time, we're here at 11 and 2 every weekday. So we have two great sessions set for today, as you would expect. Coming up now, we have a session called Strategies to Become an Employable Job Candidate.
Yes.
An interesting session because it's going to bring together a couple of different perspectives. We got a little preview speaking with our presenters. They're going to let us know that one of the things we're going to be talking about here is how your credit history is an important factor in your employability. So how do people ask questions and give comments on this?
What a great question that is,
Yes.
Jeremy. So if you have any questions, as always, please write them in the comment section in the Facebook Live part, how everybody is watching this. Write them in the comment section, and we'll be keeping an eye on that, and we will ask those questions to our presenters toward the end of the hour.
All right. We definitely want to make this as interactive as possible. So if you do have questions, certainly go ahead and share those with us.
Yes.
All right, so with that, we're going to go to Nancy, Sharon, and Heather with this morning's presentation, How to Become an Employable Job Candidate. Welcome.
Thank you very much. This is Nancy Buteau. Glad to be here. So I am going to kick us off and get us started. And then you'll be hearing from a couple other excellent presenters and excellent people. Sharon Giovinazzo from the World Services for the Blind, who's waving to you right now, and Heather Aiello with the National Association of Certified Credit Counselors. So we're a pretty live and active group, as you can tell. Last year we did this training live, a little bit different at Family Cafe. So I'm not sure if any of you out there were there, but you'll know that we're pretty funny when the three of us get together. So, but I think on this venue, it's going to be the same. So a little bit about what we're going to focus on today. The first thing is the importance of becoming financially ready to start a job. There are many things that people think of when we think of getting ready for a job, making sure that we have a resume, making sure that we have clothes for an interview, all the things that we've been doing for years and years. But we're going to talk a little bit about, are you financially ready to start a job, which we're realizing is just becoming more and more important these days. We're also going to talk about the need for solutions that advance employment and financial stability and capability for people with disabilities. So we're going to talk about some statistics which aren't real fun, but just to prove a point of, people with disabilities need to be employed full-time, can be employed full-time with the right preparation, and then can be financially stable. So we're going to talk a little bit about some action steps for building some solutions that can help people with disabilities become employed. So I'm going to kick us off with kind of some challenges. So the financial challenge of disability, if you see on your screen, people with disabilities, a financial snapshot. 1 in 9 adults have a disability. Okay, out of that, only 1 in 3 are employed. So the employment rates of individuals with disabilities are really low. And I think that's one thing that we have to start thinking about is, how to flip this. I'd really like to see this slide reversed in color, right? Where most people with disabilities are working. Not that we don't want people with disabilities not to work. I think you all understand what I'm trying to say there. So of people that are working, people with disabilities are almost 2 times more likely to have income less than $35,000. And to me, with some of the individuals that I know, that number is actually kind of high. I know many people with disabilities who are working who are basically at or below poverty level. right? They're making $8 or $9, maybe $10,000 a year, not even close to the 35,000. And you know, 35,000 in Florida is not a bad thing, but when we think of national statistics, which I think is important to just keep in the back of our mind, is if you lived in California, Los Angeles, New York City, you know, $35,000, you know, wouldn't buy you a cardboard box. So, so really not a lot there. And then as you'll see, 26% of individuals with disabilities make less than $15,000 a year. And between 15 and 35, you've got 31%. And then as household incomes increase, you'll see that the numbers of individuals working and earning those levels tend to go down. And we want to change that. And we want to tell you, you know, the importance of changing that. So there's an impact that I want to talk about in terms of financial stress on long-term economic stability and well-being. So there's a lot of economic stress that comes with living in poverty, living near poverty. And the one that I'm going to talk about here is people with disabilities are almost 2 times more likely, roughly 42% as likely to use non-bank lending. So what I mean by non-bank lending is possibly pawn shops, possibly payday lending, right? Payday lenders average 360% interest. So if ever somebody talks to you about the possibility of going to a payday lender, if you're in need of money, I highly suggest you do some research now and make sure that you don't get yourself into that situation. And the reason that people aren't banked in safe, established banking establishments are because maybe they have poor credit, as we're going to talk about. Maybe they've bounced some checks in the past, so banks aren't necessarily willing to give them another bank account. And that's why we're going to talk about some of these financial aspects. So, getting ready to start a job financially. Do you have a bank account for direct deposit? I know a lot of youth who are looking for jobs and they don't have their own bank account. And my first question to them is, when you get your first check, where is it going to go? Because most likely your company uses direct deposit. The company I work for, we actually have 2 criteria, multiple criteria, but 2 things is a good credit score in order to be hired. And we must have a bank account for direct deposit because they will not cut us a paper check. And more companies do that nowadays. Do you have a good credit score? I'm going to let Sharon and Heather talk about that more. But let me just tell you this. If you don't know your credit score, you're not ready to be applying for a job. And I'm going to leave it at that. And we're going to move on. So I hope I'm catching your attention in the sense of, you know, I'm sure everybody's resume is good to go. I'm sure you've got the clothes. You know, I'm sure you know where you want to work. Let's look at some of these other factors that are holding people back. Do you have money for safe and reliable transportation? Right? Are you looking for a job that's on your bus route? Or how are you going to get to and from work? Do you have the money to pay for transportation? That's something else that's really important. Do you need anything else? Clothing, uniforms, whatever that may be. So, and then the last bullet here, if your employer provides a uniform, or do you need to buy one? Do you have at least 1 full week's worth of clothes, proper shoes, scrubs if you need them? All the things to start thinking about prior to getting that job. Next slide, and I'll finish off here. Something else that's really important is, do you have a current ID, right? Do you have a state verifiable identification that you can use to open up a bank account, that you can use to show your employer when you're getting hired, that you can use to show the HR department when they need to know your social and all those other things when you're starting a job? Have you completed a budget? or a spending plan. So we use budget and spending plan kind of interchangeably. A lot of people don't have a budget. And the reason that I think it's important, especially for people with disabilities who might be on SSI or SSDI, is one of the things you want to consider when you go to work is financially, you want to be better off than if you weren't working, right? That kind of makes perfect sense to all of us. And the way we can do that is look at our budget prior to going to work and maybe just relying on those SSI or those SSDI benefits. Let's look at our budget and see, well, how much do you want to make so that you can not only cover your household expenses, but hopefully start saving for your future as well and start saving for your retirement. It's never too early to start saving for retirement. At somebody like me who's now closer to retirement than I am to not retiring, I can tell you the older you get, the more important it becomes. And then, as I kind of mentioned before, do you know how much you need to earn and replace the public benefits that you're on? Because nobody should be going to work and earning less than they were before. And that depends on a lot of factors, of course, whether you're on SSI or SSDI. So that's just kind of an overview of the other side of the game in terms of getting ready for a job, in terms of the financial side. And with that, I'm going to now turn it over to Sharon first, who's going to give us some words of wisdom, which she is phenomenal at. And then when Sharon's finished, she will turn it over to Heather. So Sharon, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Nancy. Appreciate that. So I don't know how much wisdom I have to share, other than the part that I run a vocational training facility in Little Rock, Arkansas. And so people come here all the time with hopes and dreams and aspirations of going to get employment. And if you have a credit score that's keeping you out of that, you know, if you're going into a call center, just about any job now, they will run a credit report on you. So we know that that's one of the things. At one time, it used to be background checks that was kind of the skeleton in the closet, and this is now the skeleton in the closet that hides some of the ways that you can get a job. So one of the things that we want to do is we not only want to fix that for the individuals that we serve, but then that became an employment opportunity for us as well. So in the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, WIOA, they actually address this, not just for people with disabilities, which has a tendency, according to NDI, has a tendency to have a lower financial literacy rate than, you know, the general population. But the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act speaks of this for people in general, that if you have that bad credit, that you can't establish a bank account, you can't get a house, there could be a chance that you might not get a job out of that. So no matter, some people say, well, that's just unfair that they shouldn't be able to turn me away from a job just because my credit's bad. I didn't have a job and that's why my credit's bad. So, you know, there's so many more things other than like what Nancy was talking about with getting ready for the interview, having a good resume, is to make sure that all of this stuff is in line. And as a person with a disability, you know, there might be things that are hidden in there on that credit report that you might not know about. It might be an overpayment status for Social Security, or it could be a doctor bill that is showing up there that's now in collections. And so you don't want those things to be held against you when you're doing this. So I am not the one that has all the wisdom on the credit side. That's actually Heather. But we see it every day that people are just surprised. You know, some jobs require background checks, and whether that be at a local and state level or whether that's at a federal level. And if you can't pass a credit check, there's a good chance that you can't pass a background check as well. So, you know, you want to be prepared and you want to have all those tools in your toolbox. And it's not something that you necessarily have to pay for to get it done and get it addressed. There's nonprofit agencies out there that help people to restore or fix the issues that are on their credit reports and to be able to give you those tools to make those sound financial decisions, because it's not just what's happened in the past, but where are you going in the future with this? Because now that you're going to go get a job, you want to be able to say, hey, I want to invest in my future. I have a retirement coming up. And the more that you work, frankly, the more you put back into the Social Security system as well, which will benefit you in your older age. So, and one of the things, Nancy, I really like what you said about you want work to put you in a better place. And it's always better to work than it is not to work. And to go and find the people who can give you those, arm you with the knowledge that you need in order to do that. I know I have a lot that I can say, but Heather, I'm going to turn it back over to you so you can talk more in depth about the credit side of this. That's above my pay grade.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm so honored to be here today with these two amazing women and all of you. Thank you so much for having all of us. And, you know, as Sharon and Nancy both said, could we go back to the other slide, Nancy, just for a second? I want to say something about this great photograph of Sharon that everyone sees here, where she's taken in the airport when she was on the news. And she brings up a great point. We all want to be productive. Nancy and Sharon both said that. We want to be productive. We want to contribute to society. And having a good credit score is so important today, and knowing what's in your credit report when you're going out to get a job. Sharon, when we first met, we spent 3 hours on the phone talking. She's so passionate about what she does. And when we first met Nancy at a conference, we sat for hours and talked. That is so important to understand and be financially healthy. Because let's think about it. Your financial health affects every aspect of your life. It affects every aspect, relationships, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But Sharon brought up a really good point. A credit score is a great equalizer. It doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter if you have a disability. It doesn't matter if you're married, if you're single, if you're blue or purple, or whoever you are. When a lender looks at your credit score, it's a number. And it's a dynamic number that's moving and shaking. And the most important thing, knowledge is power. If you know how that number and where it's derived from, there's some steadfast rules that also will always keep your credit score where you want it in the good category. And we'll talk about those too. But it is the great equalizer. And, Sharon, when we first met, we started talking. She told me a story. She says, I'm seeking you out right now because I know there's a big need for this. So Hewlett-Packard has 700 positions open. And Sharon was working on this project where they had 700 people, they all qualified, they passed the interview, the test, I'm not sure what kind of test they took, but Sharon could talk about that. But that's not the point. The point is, out of those 700, only 15 people got the job. And you know why? Because of the credit check. Very important. It's important when you get insurance, you go to get a job, even when you go get a cell phone, when you rent. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to go to the next slide and start talking about why good credit is so important. People compete for your business. You get the better rates. You get the best offers. Your automobiles. With private student loans, even today, and there's a lot of talk about student loans, and I'm not going to go off on a tangent on student loans, but if you want to get private student loans, you have to have a good credit score. And if you have a low score, you have very little negotiating power. And as Sharon's story tells us, it's a barrier to employment. So speaking of insurance premiums, there was actually a study done. It was quite a long time ago, but it was very interesting. And they said that they actually extend premiums in such a way, or how much your premium is going to be based on your credit score. And they did this study that they said that people with multiple accidents were less of a risk than those with a poor credit score. I'm not sure I agree with that study, but it's a study that, so actually you're going to pay very much higher premium if you have a low credit score. But the most important thing we're talking about today is how it affects your employment. And not only, if we go to the next slide, not only does it affect you getting a job, there are many jobs that keep your security clearance, especially if you're working with money, close you are to the money. So those are very important in the employment arena. And good credit is important because and this is how it really affects your life too. It affects your quality of life. Because if you have a low credit score, you're going to pay more for everything. Then you're going to, your bills are going to get higher. Stress builds up. This is where this is where it starts affecting your relationships. Then it affects your job performance. It affects your ability to get a job. If you're all stressed out, you're not thinking straight. And this can really add to your stress. If we go to the next slide. Getting your credit report. So there are 3 credit bureaus. And it's really important if you're going to make a big decision in life, you're going to purchase something, you're going to look for a job. It's important that you know what's in your credit report and what your credit scores are. And it's complicated, but it's not. There are 3 different credit bureaus, and Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And you always want to look at all 3 because there's differences in the 3. Some lenders report to TransUnion and Experian, but maybe not Equifax, and vice versa. Collections might be on Experian and TransUnion, not on Equifax. It's not uncommon for them to look very different in terms of reporting. So this is how you get in touch with these. But going to the next slide. Now we know we can do everything online. And I'm going to tell you one thing too, going back to the earlier screen. If you just type in Experian, TransUnion, or the websites here, I'm going to tell you it's a plethora of information. It's an amazing amount of information. Anything you need to know about credit reports, credit scores, what your consumer protection rights are. Their websites are actually really good websites. And also myfico.com, excellent resource for finding out information. But if you want to find out information about your consumer rights, ftc.gov is a good one too. So we'll go to the next screen. The next slide. This is really good news. And I think in the FINRA study that I read that Nancy shared with me, which is, by the way, a really great resource, medical bills are something people in the disability world really have a challenge with. And so this new rule in 2017, good news. And because they have to wait 180 days before they report an unpaid medical bill and send it to collections. And that's really good because we all know that sometimes the insurance company doesn't pay on time, they double bill you, and you always want to ask for an itemized bill too. You have that right to get an itemized bill and have them put everything on one bill, because that can be very confusing when you have this bill, that bill, this bill, this is 10 account numbers. And if the insurance company did fail to pay it, well, you can get it removed immediately from your report by sending a letter, and you always want to send a certified letter to whichever bureau it is you want to interact with. A lot of people, there's this big dispute. Do you dispute online? Do you do things online or do paper? I always recommend to people to do paper because you know what? You have verification, you have that stamp that you sent in on one particular date, and you have really good records. And believe me, you need to keep really good records when you're reviewing. And it can be a bit time consuming. And that's where I would encourage you to maybe seek out a financial counselor or coach to maybe guide you. They're not going to fix things for you, but they're going to educate you and help you through the process, because it can be timely. And there's resources where, like ftc.gov, like I mentioned before, you can go to their website and they actually have a template. And you just plug in your name, and then you change the account number, and then you print it out and you send it to. And you always want to send a dispute to the original creditor and the collection bureau, the collection and the credit bureau. So that's really good news. So the next one. Now this is even better news. Now this is wonderful. So all 3 credit reporting agencies are giving everyone, I don't know if you can see that website really well. It's www.annualcreditreport.com. Please go weekly and check your credit report. There's a lot of stuff going on with this pandemic, and it's quite sad that people will take advantage of others, especially in the environment that we're in today. But believe me, it's happening. It actually happened to me a month ago. Somebody had quite a good time with my credit card up there in the Northeast. And luckily, you know, I check my accounts extremely regularly to make sure this isn't happening. And boy, they bought some really silly stuff too. They bought this game. It was actually a board game and it cost $350. I was like, who pays $350 for a board game? But so yeah, they believed me pretty quickly that that wasn't me. So be careful, identity theft. And if anything does happen to you, identitytheft.gov is a fabulous. It walks you through it. This is how you do it. Step by step by step by step. So important to know that you have rights. There's so much better about dealing with things like right. A lot of the creditors have built-in systems that if they see something irregular going on with your account, they reach out to you. Sometimes they will stop your ability to use your card, and you might find that maddening, but you know what? They really are looking out for your best interests. So you can through April 2021. So, I mean, that is really good news. Please take advantage of that. And be prepared to answer some questions that might be from the past. Try and make sure you have all your financial records somewhere where you can go see that car payment that you had 10 years ago. Because, you know, not all of us are going to remember that, especially these days. We've got everything on auto bill pay. So I encourage you to have anything that you've done so you're ready to answer those questions. That can be a barrier for a lot of people. So just make sure you're ready to answer any question. Next, please. So this is what goes into your credit score. They have week-long, month-long seminars on, you know, credit scores, and then you get into scoring cards, and you get into this, and you get into that. Okay, we're not gonna go there today, and we're gonna just talk about the basics. Because if you understand the basics, you're gonna have a good credit score. So these are the basics, and there's FICO scores, and there FICO scores. There are FICO scores and Vantage scores. The FICO's been around since 1989, and Vantage has been around since 2006. So FICO, nobody knows the algorithm that they use in order to determine your score, and we're up to like FICO 10 now. So I mean, so you don't always know which FICO. Like some lenders might still be on FICO 8 or FICO 6, but we're not going to get into all of that. But just know that there are different scores, and they keep changing it, and I'm hopefully trying to improve it. But I think this last one, FICO 10, actually really takes into account when you miss a payment and it hurts your score even more than it used to. So it's really important, really important to pay your bills on time. And we all know that, but I mean, especially right now, if you can defer with the pandemic, if you can defer, just be careful that you know what you're getting into when you defer. That, you know, a lot of people think their lenders will tell them you have to pay the full balance at the end of 3 months. That's probably not true. So just be careful and know your rights if you do defer your payments. But this is what goes into your FICO score. So 35%. Oh, actually, I have a visual for you. So here's a pie chart that shows you, you know, what the different percentages are. So payment history is 35%. That, you know, pay your bills on time, like I said earlier. Amounts owed. So this is really important. Your credit utilization rate, which is how much credit you're using based on how much credit you're extended. So what you should try to keep it at, or not try, this is really important in your credit score, is keep your utilization rate around 30%. So if you max out your card, that's going to hurt your score. If you're not using credit at all, that's going to hurt your score. So be really careful, and, you know, hopefully you're paying your balances off at the end of the month. You know, try not to charge anything that you don't know that you can pay for. So your length of credit history is 15%. And so, you know, a lot of people say, well, maybe I should close this card, then I have less credit extended to me. Be careful what card you close, because you want to make sure your credit history, because that's 15%, that's a pretty good percentage. Types of credit used. They want to see you using secured and unsecured debt. That's really important to, you know, so that's 10%. And amount of new credit is 10%. And what that is you know how when you're in the department store and they say, oh, sign up for our credit card, you're going to get 10% off. Oh, it's the best thing. It's a really good idea. That credit card that has 28% interest, and they do view those type of cards differently when factoring your credit score. So, be careful, get the credit that you need, utilize it. If you're not utilizing credit, then you're not helping your credit score. If you pay cash for everything, you're not helping your credit score. So play the game smart, know what you're doing, get the credit extended to you that you need, and utilize it wisely, and you will save an enormous amount of money, as we talked about before. So this is the Vantage is not as widely used as FICO. FICO is usually used when you're going to get a mortgage, or in terms of the employment, the credit check that they're going to do is going to be different based on where you're going to seek employment. So if you do these, know that the Vantage is just a little bit different than the FICO. So 30%, 28%, 23%, 9%, 9%, 1%. So if you're paying attention, you're paying your bills on time, you've got a good mix of credit, you're watching your credit utilization rate, and you're not going out and asking every department store to give you a credit card, chances are, no matter what scoring model, there's hundreds of scoring models, no matter what scoring model they use, you're probably going to be pretty good. So let's go to the next slide. So what do we do here? We talked a little bit earlier about Nancy and Sharon and I meeting. I am so blessed. What we do here is we train financial coaches, counselors, financial and career coaches, and we get to live vicariously through them, because knowledge is power. They're helping people make an action plan. They're empowering people to know, hey, I can have a good credit score. Hey, I can go get a job. I understand my rights. So, especially with those working in the disability, we're really trying to, with WIOA, Sharon is right now writing for a grant for us, and Nancy too, writing for a grant so we can get scholarships to get the Voc Rehab and the workforce development people, because there's 140 million people out of work, and many of those are people with disabilities, and the Voc Rehab, being able to have them have an understanding of financial and career coaching and counseling, and just the resources alone, just knowing where to go get something is so important. The internet, Google's great. You can Google anything, but you want to get it from the right resource. Like you want to get it from NDI or from Sharon. So these financial and career coaches, they help people with understanding resources, creating a spending plan that works, understanding habits, behaviors. We all have, they say now it's 70% of overspending, and managing money not well and to the person's best interest, oftentimes is behavior. And we need to look at, look and think about, when you're making a purchase, is that a want or a need? What's my motivation? Thinking of improving your financial habits. And we want people, we don't want people to go and speak with financial and career coaches and counselors and feel like, oh, here's the expert, they're going to fix everything for me, all is well now. No, what we want you to do is help you to become your own financial expert. And if you are experiencing and you are on SSI or SSDI, or there's so many things I've learned from Nancy at our training events that are real eye-opening, that there's so many myths out there about money and being able to save. And by Sharon, Sharon has taught me so much about what this is really funny, actually. This is the truth. We're at conferences and I don't know where to go, and guess who shows me where to go? Sharon. I don't know how to use this phone app. Who shows me? Sharon, and always, so that's really important to get people to be their own financial experts. So, and it's all about quality of life at the end of the day. money means very different things to many different people. And I wish I had $1 for every person that said to me, I just don't manage money well. I've heard that so many times. And, thoughts, feelings, behavior. You have a thought, then you have a feeling, and then you have a behavior. If you don't think you manage money well, guess what? Probably not going to. So let's go to the next slide. So feeling, when you understand something and you get the knowledge, you have confidence. And, then you really feel like you can do it. So every journey begins with that great action plan and the first step on that action plan. So you got to set the right goals. And anybody that we train them that you're working, and I'm kind of, we get to live vicariously through those that we train and through individuals like Nancy and Sharon and their organizations. But, ultimately, a person needs to set their own goals. A person needs to understand that, what their credit report is, what their credit score is. And that's going to help you in the employment world very much. So knowing good information right now is really important, and following up, checking your credit report and your credit scores, watching your accounts. And be careful. There's a lot of conflicting information out there about, if you defer your mortgage, if you defer payments, if you do things, just make sure you speak directly to your lender and know that if they tell you something and you think it's questionable, go ahead and question that. You can do that. And, you're going to have to if you are deferring payments, you need to probably make a revised spending plan. Next slide. So this is what we do here. We train credit. These are all the designations that we offer here. And we're hoping those in the vocational rehabilitation positions and those that are working with others would take the time to train themselves in order to really empower individuals and help them through the entire process that they need in order to get out there and get employed and get into that career that they're really dreaming about. And as I said early, we're going to get 1,000 scholarships hopefully in the next month or so through this grant. Not hopefully, we're going to do it. So next slide. And this is an organization, Society of Financial and Career Consulting Professionals. We all work underneath the umbrella of the Financial Counseling Network. And I encourage you, we have a forum that has resources. I'm going to give you I'll give you an email address. It's not up on the slide, but it's quite easy. It's office@F like financial, C like counseling, N like network, online.org. If you'd like access to the resources that we have, I'd be happy to send you a login. We're happy to answer any questions. Call my office if or email me anytime. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Or, I think that also, Nancy, don't you have some really great resources on the web right now?
We do. So what is our website? If people Google National Disability Institute, you will find our website. And please don't tell my bosses that I just said that, because we used to be realeconomicimpact.org. And we finally got it narrowed down. So it might be nationaldisabilityinstitute.org. I'm not sure. But yeah, we do. And Heather, I want to thank you for offering that website to folks. And I want folks to know that usually the only people who get to those resources are people that you've certified. So that's very generous. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we can move on to questions, but I want to tell a story. Joe, do I have a couple minutes to tell a story?
Of course.
Great. I love telling stories. So my husband had major surgery February 6th, right? Which, if anybody remembers, was the first day that we had somebody in the United States pass away from COVID-19. So he was fine in the hospital. He had a couple setbacks, but once he got home, as you can imagine, we were quarantined because of COVID. We were quarantined because of his health. And things were pretty overwhelming, including bills. We thought we were staying on top of them. There was one that was questionable. So we called several times to just figure out where this bill was coming from and why it hadn't been paid already, because we had already paid a lot of money. And I got a letter 2 weeks ago from a collection agency saying that we owed this money. So thanks to Heather, I was able to say, well, I haven't received a verification letter yet. So by law, you're really not allowed to contact me until you sent me this letter. And then I said, secondly, you know, really, should this be happening during the pandemic? We've been calling and we've been trying to figure this out. It's not like we've just been avoiding. So we did figure it out. We paid it. But because of that law you talked about, it's not going to go on our credit report. Because if that went onto our credit report, I think my credit would have dropped probably 100, 150 points. At which, you know, I have a job right now, but God forbid it were to end tomorrow and I start looking for a job next week, I now no longer have good credit because of that one mistake in a 3.5 month period. You know, it's not like I left it for, you know, years. So and I say that just to say you really got to stay on top of, you know, paying those bills on time. As you said, it's a really big part of your credit score.
Nancy, thank you so much. And guys, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. This was hugely helpful. And we do have a few questions. You know, the first thing that comes to mind, and a couple of people have asked this in a little bit of a different way, but specifically for individuals with disabilities, a lot of times their credit, you know, issues are related to costs associated with healthcare costs, right? And so, you know, I guess sort of part A of the question is, you know, do you have any specific thoughts about that? I mean, obviously, you know, you can't control that. You go to the hospital, you wake up the next morning, you've got a massive bill. And we know that, you know, some hospitals are getting very aggressive in terms of coming after people for those costs. We've read some of that in the news lately. But do they treat, in terms of your employment, is it treated any differently if you have a massive healthcare unpaid, you know, cost that's bringing your score down? Do employers look at the credit report itself, or are they just looking at the number? How does that work?
That's a very good question, Joe. And I went to research that, and I'm going to tell you, it's different in every state. There are many states that have law. So I would, you know, check with your particular state what the guidelines are that employers have to follow. Some states don't allow them to utilize the credit score, so they would use more of a credit check or a credit report. So that's indicative of where you reside, or actually, yeah, I think it would be indicative of where the. Don't quote me on this. I have not researched this, but I would think it would be where the actual employer, you know, brick and mortar is.
So Heather, everybody, I'm guessing on the line is a resident of Florida. So
Oh, are they? Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah. So I don't know if you have any information specific to Florida or can refer anybody anywhere. I have one comment, which is for those employers that are just looking at the score and nothing else. If a person is going to apply for a job and they're told that their credit score is part of the application process and their credit score is not in good shape because of medical costs, I would say that to them. Say, hey, I do my best with my bills. I'm an honest person, but I have had several medical issues and, you know, that has just caused bills to pile up. And, you know, the medical community is not kind.
Yeah.
As a follow-up to that, I'm curious if you know whether or not credit reporting agencies treat medical debt differently from other types of debt, like consumer debt or student loan debt, or is it all the same in their eyes?
Actually, I know with FICO 8, they do view it differently, and it's weighted differently. To be specific about that, you know, I would definitely go to FICO's homepage where they explain the different scoring models. Like I said, FICO 10 just came out, but a lot of people are still on FICO 8, and there's a lot of changes with FICO 10, and it is weighted differently in many of the newer models.
Good to know. Good to know. Guys, one of the things that we deal with here a lot, and we talk to our good friends at Able United about this, is a lot of times people have to choose between their jobs and their benefits, right? Their income, and when does it impact your benefits? And so wonder if you can just talk about that a little bit. I mean, I guess, is there a process that you suggest? Obviously, you need to know at what point do you make too much money and lose your benefits, but anything else you want to add to that? Because that is such an issue, for us.
I am so excited that you asked that question. If you couldn't tell earlier, this is a little bit my passion. So most people who are watching are probably familiar with the FDDC, the Florida Developmental Disability Council. If you go on their website, and either, if you can't find it on their website, put in their search bar Florida benefits. I believe you can also get to it by going to floridabenefits.org, right, which was funded by the Florida DD Council. There is an entire self-paced online program written at a level for both individuals and family members for people to get more information. A person does not have to give up their benefits to work. There are a lot of work incentives and rules that the Social Security Administration has put in place. Unfortunately, they're really complicated to understand. And I'll say you can always reach out to me because, again, it's my passion and I love talking about it. And I never want somebody to give up financial security due to having to remain on public benefits.
Excellent. No, that's great. Thank you so much. We do have a few more questions here. How do gaps in employment affect credit?
I didn't hear the first part of the question, Joe.
The question is, how do gaps in employment? So if you had a
gaps in
year or two long gap, how does that impact your credit? Or does it?
That's not, as far as I know, that has no bearing on your credit. The things that determine your credit score are what is in your credit report. And so it's what I had up on the screen earlier, the different pieces of the pie. So they have a certain algorithm that they use, but the different pieces of the pie, like 35% is your payment history, 10% is your credit history, as we talked about earlier, those are the things that are factored into your credit score. It doesn't matter if you're married, single, working, educated, none of those things go into your credit score. It's just it's not a hard number, it's a dynamic number, but it's just a number.
Gotcha. So we had another question, specifically, what is considered a low credit score?
Anything, I believe the mark now is about 620. Once you get under if you they have very good, and then not so good and poor. And I think right now with the environment that we're in, you got to remember that they're looking at credit scores in a different way right now. The lending is really tightened up. So I think you definitely, where you want to be is around 700, so it goes up to 850. Once you get down in the low 600s, that's when you're going to start not getting the best offers. And then you get below 600, that's when you're going to start getting the really high, you might have to go to a secured credit card at that point.
Is that the point where you probably might not get a job that you've applied for?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on what the barometers are for the different employers. I think that would be not a good idea for me to say, oh, this is, and you're going to be fine and you're going to get the job, because that's, indicative.
It depends on the employer. It really depends on the employer. If you're applying for a job at the Federal Reserve Bank, they're probably going to expect a really high credit score. If you're applying for a job at Publix and they check credit scores, they're going to be a little more lenient. So it really depends on where you're applying for a job at.
Gotcha.
And
Right.
it's a dynamic thing. You can improve your credit score. If be prepared. If you're job seeking, go pull your credit reports and dispute that item that's not supposed to be on there. Do your best. If you don't have any trade lines open one. If you don't have any trade lines at all, that's going to affect your credit score. You have to have and use credit to have a good credit score. Just use it wisely.
We just got another question, and that's a good one. It says, any advice for a 20-year-old to build credit?
Yes, I do have a lot of good advice for that. If they can become an authorized user, do that. If they're a student, Discover will give them a credit card, and it's a really good one. So apply for the student credit cards if they're a student. If they're not a student and they have no credit score whatsoever, hopefully they have a relationship with their bank or their credit union. They do have, secured credit cards to get started with, but be careful when you do that. Make sure it's with a reputable institution.
Yeah.
Be very leery of institutions. Don't just go online and pick one. I'd be careful. I would try it for your credit union. Find out in his local community or she or her local community. Make sure they got a bank account. Get a relationship with a credit union or a bank, and it's indicative of what's available to them there.
And don't use it to buy pizza for all your friends.
Say, yeah, right. Don't do what Jeremy did in college.
Yeah. Well, don't tell Joe that. I'm trying to get him to buy me pizza.
Yeah, that's later. That's
guys. A car loan if they, starting, once they get established with a credit card, a car loan gets that mix of credit. Just do it wisely, very wisely.
No, absolutely. Great. So guys, just for the last question, and maybe Heather, maybe you can repeat the website that you mentioned before, but the last question is, what nonprofits help with fixing your credit?
Many. Your community-based agencies. Actually, we partner with Cities for Financial Empowerment, and Nancy also works with Empower New York. It's really a great initiative. They're instituting free financial coaches in many cities, and I think it's up to like 82 now, and I think it's even more. Your community-based agencies, United Way, all of them are different. Some offer financial coaching and some don't, but faith-based like Catholic Charities, Jewish Family Services. There's a lot of community action agencies. There's many community development corporations. There's the housing counseling institutions in a lot of the communities also do financial coaching. So in the different communities, United Way, Catholic Charity, Jewish Family Services. Also, there are many credit counseling agencies in many agencies, and if you're like online, there's many resources and people available online. And you can always, if you want a referral, feel free. So the website is F like financial, C like counseling, N like network, online.org is our website. You can get our phone number, email, and if you want to be a part of our forum, the email address to request is office at once again, fcnonline.org, and reach out to us, and we'll definitely, we are nationwide, we're even international, and we'll definitely steer you in your particular community, because I'm always a big proponent of, if you can do face-to-face, do face-to-face.
And we'll make sure to share that website in the comment thread on the video as well. So there'll be a link in there if you're
thank you.
to write it down.
Thank you very much.
And Heather, I also think people could go on to Florida Prosperity Partnerships website.
Oh, yes.
For some resources as well, and might be able to find local counselors for free in their area. And I believe their website is F as in Frank, pp.org.
Great. Well, guys,
or just Google Florida Prosperity Partnership.
Thank you so much. That was a lot of information. That was really helpful, and I hope that helped. That was really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. 3 excellent presenters. I thought.
Man, that was really good.
I'd be hard pressed to come up with presenters with names that are more fun to say.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say right now, I'd like to thank Nancy Buteau, Sharon Giovinazzo,
Giovinazzo,
and Heather Aiello.
You got it. You almost got it.
Good.
That was close. That's
Good.
close enough.
Yay.
All right. Well, another excellent session. Thanks again for being here with us. We also want to take a second here to thank a few of our sponsors,
Yes.
particularly Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, who's made our sign language interpretation possible throughout this whole event. So big thanks both to VR and to those interpreters. The Department of Education, of which we are a Bees special project. So thanks always to them. And of course, Able United, Career Source Florida, Disability Rights Florida, and Sunshine Health. So those kind of tie in nicely because if you're thinking about a way to protect your long-term finances and your benefits while you're working, Able United is a great place to go for that.
Yes.
And Disability Rights Florida happens to be the organization that will be presenting at 2 o'clock today.
Correct.
What do they have going
2
on?
o'clock, we will hear from Felicia Jordan, and that is supported decision-making and guardianship alternatives. Important issue.
Yes, guardianship is always an issue that people want to hear about when they come to the face-to-face annual Family Cafe. And so this is your opportunity to hear all about it here during the virtual Family Cafe.
Excellent.
All right.
We
So
look forward to seeing everybody at 2 o'clock.
yes, we will see you at 2. Thanks very much for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.